All right, welcome to the Krueger Show, everybody. Back with you after a busy day in NFL free agency. I got the Warriors going on right now, and in at Staples against the Clippers, and we'll talk a little Warrior basketball later on tonight. But we're back talking football with Jessie Naylor, one of our favorites. He's got a great YouTube channel, and he's back with us to break down the 49ers in free agency. And of course, it has been a busy, busy week. And Jesse, good to see you, man. We got this one from Refugio, which I was showing to you before the show. Refugio Gomez. I've been going from Grant's live to Krug's live to Jessie Naylor's live all day, all of the off season. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the support, Larry. It is fantastic to be back on with you, man. We chop it up. We have good conversation. So I look forward to this show now. I do.
Dude, I do too. MF in the chat says all the sports on right now, but the Krug show is the best watch. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, MF. Brian says, Krug, you're supposed to be watching the Warrior game. I got one eye on the Warrior game, but I gotta hang with my man Jesse, who looks like he's got a new setup. I like the orange. Is it red or kind of orange?
Yeah, it's red. I can change the colors. I can do all sorts of crazy stuff.
Really?
Whatever I want. It's at my disposal.
Dang, I like that look. And you got the new camera, you got the new mic, you got the setup. What are you burning on Niners wise? They were big on day one with Hargrave. I haven't talked to you since any of the moves came down.
No.
So I want your thoughts on all of it, but where do you want to start? I'll let you, dealer's choice. I'll let you go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, let's start with today's moves. I mean,
okay.
the Hargrave move was amazing. And I think what they did with the contract was even better. And this is where Parag makes magic happen. Is he just works these contracts so that he always has these outs. You're not overpaying for these guys. He did a great job there. But today's signings, I mean, I think they got maybe a couple steals here, especially in Oliver, who I really liked coming out of college. I know that you geek out on the draft and prospects. Yeah. I don't know what you thought of Oliver. I actually had him as my third-ranked corner coming out of that draft. He was teammates with Ahkello Witherspoon over in Colorado, and he's just a really, really good athlete. A couple years ago towards ACL, maybe hasn't lived up to the expectations necessarily, but he did come on strong, especially towards the tail end of last year. And losing Emmanuel Moseley was definitely a little bit of a gut punch, but I feel much better now that they've got Oliver and have added some depth there. And I think Oliver is a guy who just might find his way into the starting lineup on this team, whether it's nickel or outside, we'll see. But I think that that's a possibility. And then, you go get a Clelin Ferrell who, not the best career, very Solomon Thomas-like, but for the Raiders. But you never know. Chris Kasarik can work his magic, and that wasn't an expensive signing. It's just adding some depth. So I like what they did today. Not major moves, but I do enjoy the moves that they did make.
Well, I mean, let's go with Isaiah Oliver to start. You're always going to look better if you got a big-time pass rush in front of you. But what I like about Oliver is that some of these guys who play the corner are small and don't, they really play the game like they don't want to hit anybody. They don't want to tackle anybody. They don't want to come up against the run. I like Oliver's grades against the run. I think he's really going to help them. And this was a big need. I was going to do a video on this tomorrow about how, it's not just that they lost a corner in Emmanuel Moseley. They lost a corner who's really good at supporting the run aggressively. And I thought they really were missing that with Moseley leaving. They lost Moseley and Ward leaving. To me, the Niners lost a lot of the physicality of their defensive backfield. Both those guys are very fast and can cover, but they're also really physical. And Oliver, I like because I think he does play physical and he is a bigger bodied guy and he will come up and run support. So, I mean, I like him as a cover man, but I really like him in his ability to step up to the run.
Yeah, and in Colorado there for a minute was kind of churning out these really good corners. You had the Cheetah Bay Awuzie class, and then you had Oliver and Witherspoon. And I feel like all these guys slightly have underperformed what we thought, but man, his athletic profile is incredible. I think he was a track guy, jumps through the roof, is a willing tackler, like you said. I just feel like there's a lot of potential there. And again, you're getting a guy that Wilkes probably had a hand in, saying that he wants this kid. And we know he develops corners, he develops secondary. That's his specialty. So I think they might have a steal here. And then they got him for 2 years. not expensive. I like it.
I never saw the numbers on it. What was the numbers reasonable on the contract?
I didn't see the numbers either, but
Oh,
it's gonna be a lot. I mean, if they let
Yeah.
Mosley walk for $6 million a year and you're doing a 2-year deal, I mean, I gotta imagine it's not going to be expensive at all, Larry.
Well, what I love too is that you can't. The one thing about football, unlike other sports, there's zero room for for being sentimental.
Mhm.
Sentimentality just goes nowhere. Guys get old quick. Guys who were good this year look old next year. There's a reason that Bill Walsh was all about, hey, get rid of a guy a year too early instead of a year too late, because it's really easy to stay with a guy a year too long or 2 years too long because, man, it's a physical sport and he's done it for me in the past. And there's no room for that. So as much as I love Mosley, I like the fact that they got younger, healthier, and a more athletic replacement for cheaper. I mean, I think that's what you call win-win-win right there.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I do like Mosley, and especially when he walked away for
I know.
$6 million, I was like, oh man, I don't know about that. How are they going to fill this one? But they did a good job here, so not upset.
Okay, one super chat before we get to another one here that I think's something I want to get into. J. Mark Garza says, Larry, love the show. I no longer live in Cali, so it's great to see you on YouTube. Having Jesse on the show is awesome. Great guys talking Niners. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, thank you, Jay.
Third String All Pro says Jesse thinks we're a worse team today. And since I
Not
follow
true.
Jesse
Not true.
on
Let's talk
social
about it.
media, I don't have to just go by what the chat says. I'm pretty much, the people I have on the show, I make sure that I kind of keep up with them so I know like where you're at and what you're saying and because then I know, hey, Jesse said something, I want to get him on today or something like that. So I've been following your social media and the Mosley move when Mosley left, that for you, am I saying this right? That was a big negative for you and made you kind of feel like, hey man, you might be better by the end of the offseason, but today, without a manual, you're not better. Does
I
that
think it
sum
was
it up? Or?
twofold. It wasn't just the Mosley move. It was, and to be fair, third string All Pro. That was a comment I made yesterday, and I was
Right.
also very clear in saying this thing changes quickly. Heck, free agency technically hasn't even started yet. In 2 days, I may change my mind. Right now, I would say they're probably pretty close to even. If they're worse, it's not as bad as they were yesterday. Yesterday, I said, listen, at this very moment, they are not a better team, and they're starting to inch their way back. They're right there. So, but yeah, in that moment, it wasn't just Mosley, it was Bradbury, because I felt like
That he
Bradbury was a
re-signed in
clear.
Philly, you mean?
No, not the corner Bradbury. Bradbury the center.
I
Sorry.
got you. Garrett
Yeah,
Bradbury.
Garrett Bradbury. Yeah, I should have clarified. I guess there was two in free agency. But when Bradbury re-signed with Minnesota, if for as little as he re-signed, and the way that it came down the timeline was Bradbury signed, 2 minutes later, Brendel signs. So that tells me the 49ers were in on Bradbury. They weren't willing to go the extra mile and maybe give him $6 million a year instead of $5.5 million. And so the job didn't get done. Brendel's played fine, but I think Bradbury's a clear upgrade. He wouldn't have been that expensive. You lost Mike McGlinchey. And so my whole thing this offseason was Mike McGlinchey's not coming back. They shouldn't re-sign Mike McGlinchey because he's going to be too expensive. You're most likely not going to upgrade at right tackle, but you can upgrade at center. They chose not to do that. And then just a little bit later, we find out Mosley was gone for very inexpensive also. And I'm like, Mosley was kind of one of those guys that we thought, hey, $12 million. That's kind of where we penciled him in, 10 to 12 million. Probably won't be back. It's 6 million though. Holy crap. Like probably should have brought him back. So I think those two moves in succession, and then Brendel coming back right after, basically telling me that they were in on Bradbury. I thought at that point yesterday, yes, they were not a better team.
It's interesting. The two positions on the football team that I really do value continuity, O-line, O-line and secondary. So yeah, I agree with you. I think there were better guys out there than Brendel. I was looking for a kind of a bigger bodied guy to maybe somebody who's more like 310, 320. But there is something to be said for having continuity, especially in your interior of your offensive line. So I don't want to say it's a wash, but Brendel did have a good year last year. I'm sure he wanted to show loyalty to the Niners, right? Because I don't want to say they invented him, but they took him from your nobody knows to you're a Pro Bowl alternate. He did a lot of the work, obviously, but they gave him the opportunity. So I think he probably wanted to show loyalty. And then it's like, yeah, I want to upgrade, but I also want to make sure there's some continuity. What did you think of the Clelin Ferrell move today? As far as he seems like an interesting guy. It's like like everybody else. I liked him at Clemson. He made a ton of plays, but then I saw the workout numbers and all the other defensive ends in that draft, and I thought, man, this guy's probably a high second round pick, maybe a late first. If he had gone in the late 20s, I would have thought, okay, it's about right. When the Raiders took him fourth, I was like, oh my God. And I just didn't see the incredible upside or explosiveness or ability to flatten the quarterback. I didn't see the speed. I didn't see the agility. And he's played, 4 full seasons, but he only has 10 career sacks. And his best work is really done against the run. He'll be better here, I think. But what do you think of the move overall? I mean, to me, it's a nice depth piece, but it definitely isn't the kind of move that makes me go, yeah, yes, great move.
Yeah, it was definitely a depth piece, but it's interesting when you think about this whole thing because we draft Solomon Thomas, kind of a tweener, took him too high. When he leaves San Francisco, he goes to the Raiders. They draft Farrell, who's kind of like their Solomon Thomas, tweener, took him too high. He leaves, he goes to San Francisco. So I look at it and say, this is kind of our get back. He's your Solomon Thomas, and we'll take him and see if we can turn him into something. It's clearly a depth piece. But when you look at his career, his rookie year was actually his most productive year. He just wasn't able to build on it. And I think a few things happened. One, you had an organization that was in major flux. You lose the people in the front office and head coach that drafted you and fell in love with you. A new regime comes in. They don't have any ties to you. They don't even really play you. So, I mean, I think that he's a guy that could come in with Chris Kasarik and have a little bit of a resurgence and play. Not going to say he's going to be anything great, but the 49ers need depth. They absolutely need depth. They need bodies, and he provides that 100%. So I don't mind it at all.
Yeah, I don't mind it because they're losing 3 defensive ends, or maybe 3. They've already lost Ebukam, they've already lost Amenahue. Any word on Jordan Willis?
I haven't heard anything about
I haven't heard
Willis.
anything
I would
either.
like to bring him back though.
I would too. And I think he's probably, if you had made me pick which of the guys do you think they'd bring back, I'd probably would have said
Yes.
Willis.
Yeah.
Refugio says it looks like it's going to be a foregone conclusion that the Niners will draft a tight end. 13 of them that would have been first or second in any other draft. I think it's a great position. I don't know, I think tight end for sure is a position that they will draft a player. I've been talking up trying to get into that first round from Michael Mayer because I think he's incredible. But you know what? It's a great group. I mean, Dalton Kincaid is a really good player. Darnell Washington, I think, has got unbelievable skills. Sam Laporta. I like Payne Durham a lot. Zach Kuntz, it looked good in the workouts from Old Dominion. Schoonmaker. I mean, there's a bunch of tight ends in this draft going into, day 2, day 3. What did you think of the Hargrave move? Let's get to the Hargrave move. Obviously, that's the big money move. That's the one that kind of shocked everybody. What was your first reaction when you saw that? And now that you've had a day or two to kind of let it sink in, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I think on the surface, I had heard on late February that he was the one that the 49ers were going to target this offseason. And I was like, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'm not quite sure. I mean, he's 30 years old. He had his best season last year. Do you really want to spend all this money at the defensive tackle position? Then the contract comes out. I'm like, oh my gosh, like how much they're paying Armstead and now they're paying all this to Hargrave. I don't know how I like this. But once the details came out of the contract, I absolutely fell in love with it because he is a really good player. There's no denying that. It's essentially a 2-year deal. They have an out after 2 years where, there will be a cap hit, but it's minimal. And the first 2 years, the money is not out of control at all. It goes from like 6.6 to like 15 something. That is not out of control. So once I saw the full details of the contract and not just the total amount, I mean, I love the move. I don't know how you can't like the move at that point because, like I said, 2 year deal, essentially 21, $22 million. Yeah, that's a great steal. And I know this is something you like, Larry, taking away from your biggest rival potentially in the NFC as far as who you're going to have to go through. That's always a great move. So you win in two ways. So yeah, absolutely. I love the Hargrave signing.
Well, and it's like I used to be a big fan of these two gapper behemoths that clog everything up, but you know what? I'd rather invest in somebody like that later in the draft who's just super strong and doesn't give any ground. The game is a passing game, and it's all about pass rush. And what's Hargrave? He's a one gap penetrator who gets up the field and wreaks havoc and makes your rest of your defense better because he puts heat on the quarterback. I mean, to me, it's all about moving the quarterback off the spot, making the quarterback uncomfortable. I'm not saying that there's no place in the game for a two gap tackle, but I just think that, starting with the Eagles a few years ago when that Nick Foles team, I think that was the first line that I felt like every guy on that line could rush the passer and there wasn't really a run stuffer. It was more just four guys who could kind of get after it. I think that's the way to go. I don't want to, I wouldn't mind having like one D lineman on my team that was a plugger who really didn't give you much rush, but the rest of the guys got to be able to rush the passer, man. It's too much of a passing league. So, and I'm never paying any two gapper
No.
ever. I mean, I want pass rushers, one gap penetrators, and guys who can sack the quarterback. And if you can't, I think you're letting the other team off a little easy because if they can block, they're already blocking five, blocking four with five. If you make them block three with five, I think you're doing them a favor.
I think I think two gap players like that can be had very late in drafts, and I think that they are kind of dime a dozen. If I'm going to get a two gap guy, I'll draft him in round 5 or round 6. I'll keep him for 3 or 4 years. Then when that contract's up, I'll just do it again. So, I mean, that's where I would get a two gap player, and I think that having a two gap player is a good thing on a team, but not that's not how you want to build your team. And by the way, Hargrave is a guy that you're not going to be able to do what you did to Javon Kinlaw last year or any of these other defensive tackles that were not named Armstead. The Philadelphia Eagles looked at Armstead and said, okay, we're just going to stay away from you and we're going to run right at who's ever lined up next to you and we're going to punish them. And they did that. They dominated it. Hargrave is not going to get dominated in that situation. So that is a big win.
Yeah. What happens to Kinlaw?
Man, I don't know. I mean, I think the conversation is real. Does Kinlaw even make this roster at this point? They're only tied into him one more year. I know his contract is guaranteed, but man, I don't think he's better than Givens. Is he going to be better than Kalia Davis? I don't know. So I don't know if he's one of the best 53 men on this roster at this point. We'll see what happens to Kinlaw, but he's not going to be on this team past this year.
I gotta think there's a swap coming up for him that brings a player that maybe could make the roster because I think you're right. I think you're right. I don't think he's going to make the team if they just brought him back. And I
Yeah.
don't think they believe that either. So I think they won't bring him back. I think they'll wind up flipping him to another team for a player that also had their 5th year, option not picked up and not exercised, and somebody who's, and it may be a different position, it may be a different player altogether, but I could see him moving in a trade. Matt NYSF 49er fan says Detroit's going to be a bigger threat to the 49ers than people expect. Now, I do
I
follow
agree.
you on Twitter, and I know this is a point that you have made. Give me your breakdown on this one. I mean, we're in free agency, so the names are flying left and right, and it's almost like you need a depth chart of every team in the league to really figure out
For
who's
sure.
got who and who's added what and who's lost what. But Detroit did, and I haven't studied them, but I know they got David Montgomery, who's I think a really good running back from Chicago. And we know they've already got pretty damn good weapons, with with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. Those two guys alone are just ridiculous home run hitters. What do you think? What do you think of Detroit? Are you really believing that the Lions may be the number one competitor to the Niners?
I think that there's a real possibility here. I really do. They were close, Larry. They were very close to making the playoffs last year. And whenever you have a team that has nothing to play for in the final week, but they're the ones that come out with their hair on fire like they have something to play for, you know that they're coached well. And so we've got that going for them. They're a very good offense. They were explosive last year, surprisingly. And that was without Jamison Williams really even playing. So you add him into the fold. He's now not coming off of an injury. They needed to beef up the defense. They needed to get a linebacker. They needed to get another edge. And they needed to probably go get two corners. Well, they got the corners. They got Mosley and they got Cam Sutton. So they've upgraded there. They have 2 first-round picks, which they're going to do something with. And they still have money to play with. I mean, if they went and got out either a Bobby Wagner or I forget the kid's name that just came from Tampa Bay, David. No, he's not a kid. I mean,
Levante?
he's like 30 something. But you know what I mean? You add him, all of a sudden the linebackers are taken care of, and you got 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks at your disposal. A team that's been drafting pretty well as of late. I think Detroit might come up quicker than people are thinking. And a lot of people look at Jared Goff. I'm not scared of Jared Goff by any means. I'm not saying they're better than the 49ers or they're going to beat the 49ers. But I don't think 49er fans at this point really can look across at Detroit and say, oh, it's just Jared Goff. Jared Goff's a 3-time Pro Bowler. And I know that's not how we necessarily measure quarterbacks around here, but he's been a little bit beyond a serviceable. And the 49ers don't have a for sure quarterback right now. They have no certainty at the quarterback position. They have guys that I think certainly can be better than Jared Goff, but they are not that yet. So I don't think we are in a position to point and laugh at Jared Goff being a starting quarterback for a team because I think they have more stability there, at least at this moment, than the 49ers do.
Well, and they got weapons. I mean, they got some serious
And a good O-line. Very good
yeah,
O-line.
yeah. They may have one of the best O lines. I mean,
Mhm.
Taylor Decker at left tackle, Ragnow at center is a big time player. Panay Sewell was a blue chipper. Yeah, I mean they've got some really nice players there. They've got a can full of backs, though. I guess Jamal Williams is probably moving on. They just added Mosley, which gives them a veteran player on the back end. If they could add another piece or two up front to go with Aiden Hutchinson and maybe a linebacker or two. I love that kid, James Houston, that they got in the 6th round
Yeah.
on this last draft. I thought he was fantastic. So Derek Barnes is there. Detroit's on the come. I agree with that take. I don't know that they're going to get there this year, but they're coming. They're coming. And there's very few teams in the NFC that you can really say that about. Fish and Chips says, next quarterback through the door. Who's it going to be? It's going to happen. Well, the Niners have Trey, and they've got Brock, and they picked up Sam Darnold. So why don't we start there? What did you think of Sam Darnold when you first heard it? And what do you think of it now that you know that they're giving him $3.5 million guaranteed? And we've had a day or so to kind of chew on it and listen to different people weigh in on it. I did a thing last night with Vish. He said, I didn't hear this, but he said that Greg Papa says that Sam Darnold could be the starter, which makes me wonder who the hell's saying that to Greg, or does Greg just have a really, really high opinion of Sam Darnold based on what he looked like at SC? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not saying that Greg hasn't heard it. I'm not sure. Greg also was like, let's sign Jimmy to a lifetime contract. So I don't know if I trust his quarterback takes so much. Appreciate you, Greg. Great. I mean, you do a great job,
Right.
and I love you.
No
but,
offense, but
no, that's I'm not taking any quarterback advice from Greg Papa, unfortunately. I think Sam Darnold was a great signing. When you hear $3.5 million guaranteed and it can escalate and what have you, yes, that's a lot for a 3rd string quarterback. But let's be real. Sam Darnold easily could have gotten a backup role for probably 15 other teams. So to bring him in and tell him, hey, you might end up being 3rd string here. We'll see how this thing plays out. They're going to have to pay him like they would a backup quarterback. And I think that's what's happened here. I think Sam Darnold he's a guy that I did briefly mention as a guy. I'm like, hey, you know what? Maybe I think I said like him, Baker, Wentz, like maybe those are the types of guys that you might be able to lure in because they've struggled as of late. They kind of just need to take a step back and gather themselves for their career. Now Baker looks like he might be getting a starting job. Kudos to him. We'll see what happens with Wentz, but yeah, Sam Darnold fits that mold. I don't know if you could have gotten a better guy. I mean, we were talking about a lot of players that we would love to go get, but truth be told, those guys are most likely going to be backup quarterbacks. So to get this guy to possibly be your third stringer, I think that's a hell of a deal. I can't think of any team that has a better third string quarterback than Sam Darnold. And he's not great by any means, but he can start. I think he can win some games. And you put him into this offense, I mean, you're probably going to get the best version of Sam Darnold. What he is not going to do, in my opinion, which a lot of people have taken this and said, okay, well, he's getting paid a lot of money. Now that makes Trey Lance disposable. I don't see it that way at all. I mean, I think it's possible that Brock Purdy may not be able to play to start the season. I think that's a very real possibility, more of a real possibility than Lance being traded before this thing starts. So I don't see it that way at all. Sam Darnold started 55 games. I think we kind of know what Sam Darnold is. They got to figure out what Trey Lance is. And if they're not going to figure it out, it's not going to be because Sam Darnold is the starting quarterback. It's going to be because Brock Purdy is the starting quarterback.
I'm not sure if I like it or not. It's like, for one, the money, it's great money for the number two if he's the number two, but it's kind of a lot of money for the number three if he's indeed number three. The other thing is, if Brock is not ready to play, because I think Brock's the best quarterback they have right now, but if Brock's not ready to play, I mean, I don't want Shanahan to have another option than Trey Lance. I don't want him to be able to say, I like Trey Lance, just not today, for the, just, into the future. I mean, put Trey out there and allow Trey to be judged. And guess what, Kyle? Allow yourself and John to be judged, because we all know that's what's coming. It plays like they're trying to protect themselves from the criticism. Trey better play over Darnold. If Darnold plays over Trey, bring on the criticism for Shanahan and Lynch, because they deserve it. They got to wear that. I mean, if Sam Darnold signed off the street, given up for dead, basically, if he is getting reps over a healthy Trey Lance, then that's probably means Trey Lance is a bust, or at least not going to work here. And then it's time to move Trey, or it's time for those guys to take the big L and just admit that they effed it up. Because I was hoping for a player that would basically, I mean, I don't mind Sam Darnold from the standpoint of I want you to be able to win with all three quarterbacks. The only thing I like about Sam Darnold is he's in the prime of his career. He's not too young. He's not too old. He's right there, ready to win, ready to play. So that part I like. But if this is just another way to go, well, Trey was a little rough in the preseason and Sam's just got a little bit better feel. I don't want that. I think that's I don't know. What if that happens, what is your take going to be?
Oh yeah, if that happens, then I mean, what the hell are you doing? Like that cannot happen. That can't happen.
You can't go with
So
Sam over Trey.
no, definitely
Not a
not.
healthy Trey.
No, definitely not. And again, I look at Sam Darnold and say, all right, yes, it's a lot of money, but when you add up the three quarterbacks, they're getting paid less than Jimmy Garoppolo is this year. It's still
Yeah.
not a lot of money.
No, it's not.
One thing they didn't do is pay Sam Darnold more than they're paying Trey Lance. So I don't think, certainly they didn't give him third string quarterback money, but they didn't also give him first string quarterback money. So I don't believe that will be the case. But if it is the case, then I don't know what the hell they're doing. I really don't. I would lose all faith that Shanahan has any clue what the hell he's doing when it comes to the quarterback position. Absolutely has built a good roster, great culture from everything it sounds like. He has a lot of really good things to like about him. knowing what to do at the quarterback position certainly sometimes seems like we don't quite know what we're doing there. If you start Sam Darnold over Trey, then I know you don't know what you're doing there.
Yeah. No, I mean, that one's going to be frustrating. If we get to September and it's like it's the Sam Darnold show and Trey's not quite ready, and no, then you guys, we need to wrap this whole regime up. If we can't, you drafted him, either he can play or he can't play, and it's got to happen right now. No more delaying it. And I just don't know if I want him to have that easy of a. We're not going with Trey just yet. We're going with Sam. It's like, oh my God, I'll
No,
puke if that happens.
no.
J. Mark Garza says, think Trey and Drake Jackson make the biggest leaps in 2023. I think that's a good call. I expect
Yeah.
Drake to put on some upper body strength. I expect Trey to be that much better and that much more up to speed on everything. I think that's probably a pretty good guess. You just did a stream with Grant. Did Grant throw the 2.5 seconds stat to you on Sam?
He didn't, but somebody else in the chat did.
It's pretty amazing. Grant threw it to me. It's 2.5 seconds. When he gets rid of it under 2.5 seconds, career-wise, he's 68.8% completion percentage. When he holds it longer than 2.5 seconds, 49.5% completion percentage. That's staggering, Jesse. That's defining in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it definitely is. Yes, and I think holding the ball longer certainly can result in a lower completion percentage. I think to a certain extent, Trey's kind of been a part of that. I mean, he takes deeper shots. On average, he's throwing 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. That's what Trey Lance has done in a short stint. So, yeah, I think that can be a possibility, especially if you don't have the line to protect you. He's looking to take deep shots, and I don't know. I know that's the case with Trey Lance. I don't know what the case is with Sam Darnold. I don't know if it's he's looking to take deep shots or he generally doesn't see the field well. We do know the famous quote, "I'm seeing ghosts out here." Is that a real thing still? And he just doesn't know how to go through his progressions. I don't know. I'll have to watch a lot more Sam Darnold and figure that out for myself. But yeah, that is a staggering stat to say the least.
Jesse, how tweaked is my internet right now? I'm getting people in the chat saying, "What's wrong with Larry?" I've got a potato or something like that. Is my internet a little? I've got too many windows open, maybe.
Yeah, you're definitely fuzzy, but a lot of times that's StreamYard, and so I didn't say anything because I thought the chat would probably call it out. But yeah, I mean, it was like time
Is it
delayed there for a
lagging?
minit for me and whatever.
I mean, can you hear what I'm saying though?
I can hear everything you're saying. Your lips are just behind.
Damn. Maybe I should reboot. I don't know. Maybe we should I stay with it or should I try to reboot? I'm just kind of wondering.
I don't know.
Um,
I'm fine either way. Whatever you want to
okay.
do.
We'll just keep rolling. We'll keep rolling. If it's
Yeah.
really, really bad, let me know and I'll have to move it. Um, one of the things here, one other super chat, Refugio says Jordan Mason's gonna have a breakout season. I think there's a very good chance of that. Very good chance of that. I think the one thing that was a little frustrating this year was that Shanahan didn't give Jordan Mason more run.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
come on.
I think we'll have to see if he's gonna have a breakout season. I think he has the ability to have a breakout season, but does Shanahan continue to grind his top running back and CMC into the ground? I don't know. I think there's a lot of players on this team that could have breakout seasons, Larry. That were kind of redshirted from the season prior. There's a lot of names.
No question. I mean, this to me, Tay Martin is going to be good. I like
Interesting.
Tay Martin,
Yeah.
but I'm a big college football fan. I watched him at Oak State. He catches everything, man.
Yeah.
He doesn't run real fast, but as far as a red zone threat, man, Tay Martin,
Well,
watch for him next year.
uh, it's possible that Jennings is back for this 1 year and then Tay Martin just kind of takes over, you know?
Well, that would be nice. That would be, I would take that. I absolutely would take that. Um, what do you think overall of the 49ers approach to building? Because the one thing I love about the way they're doing it, they're signing right now, last year Charvarius, this year Hargrave. Then they're just allowing all these kind of good players to just leave, and they're leaving in mass. And then they're getting all these comp picks. And then they're hitting on day 2 and day 3 picks and after the draft. And the one thing you can say is the Rams built one, now are tearing it down. The Chiefs have had problems with their roster and their depth. They've won a Super Bowl. They've won 2. Niners have not been able to win any, but they have had as deep a roster since 2019 as anybody in pro football. What do you think about the way they're kind of going about it right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as like what they're doing with their draft picks and how well they've been drafting late and developing players, I think they've done a fantastic job. Overall, I don't dig their philosophy as far as how to build the team, where you're putting most of your assets in. I mean, to me, I think there's three things that you look at when you build a team. You go get your superstar quarterback, you go protect that superstar quarterback, and then you go and get after other superstar quarterbacks. The way that I see it is the 49ers kind of work that backwards, where they say, hey, we're going to go get after superstar quarterbacks. Then we're going to go get a lot of good, uh, outside players. And then, we'll kind of like figure out the quarterback and offensive line thing. We'll get an elite offensive lineman, but outside of that, we'll kind of piecemeal it together. I don't know if the overall philosophy I dig, but how they go about adding those pieces, I think is phenomenal. And getting those pieces to develop the way that they do and kind of redshirt and have, like I said, they're kind of like the Alabama of the NFL, the way they redshirt players. And it seems like every time somebody leaves, they got somebody just as good or better waiting to come in. That's very SEC of them to do in the NFL. So from that standpoint, I love it. Just the overall philosophy. I'm like, I don't know if that's how I would build my team.
I like it just because it gives them an awful lot of young players, and they're always
Mhm.
deep, and they always have ascending players. I kind of like their approach. Now we'll see if it's got to produce a ring, right? I mean, if it doesn't produce a ring, it doesn't produce a ring. But I kind of like their depth year to year. I always do an exercise at the beginning of camp, and I look at everybody's 53-man roster, or camp roster, I guess 80-man roster. The Niners roster in camp is always as deep as any team in pro football. I thought the Niners and Eagles had the deepest rosters in the NFC this year by
Yeah.
far. And sure enough, they played at the end for the NFC Championship game. So, or in the
I
NFC Championship game.
I agree with that, and sometimes it's one of those questions that I have to check myself almost every offseason. I'm like, is it just that I know all these players because I'm a Niner guy and I don't know some of these other guys from across the league? But reality is, no, that's not what's happening. It's they just genuinely have the deepest roster year after year after year.
Corey says, "What if it's as simple as Brock making third quarterback money so you can pay Sam Darnold to insulate yourself?"
Yeah, totally fair.
I mean, there's all kinds of theories. Amby says he needs to allow Trey to actually play quarterback instead of running him like a running back. I think we got to get beyond the Trey's a dual quarterback and just call him a quarterback.
I agree. I
Um,
agree. Yeah.
I don't know. I get the feeling that the Niners are a little fearful of being wrong. They know that once Trey plays, they'll be judged, so they're trying to push it back as far as possible so that he can look as good as possible, so they can look as good as possible. That's my read on it.
Yeah, the whole thing was weird, Larry, because you watch what the Patriots did with Mac Jones, who now seems to be on the outs a little bit. But when Mac Jones was there, they didn't mess around with Cam Newton, who wasn't as good as Jimmy Garoppolo at that point in his career. I understand that, but they didn't mess around. They just said, "Listen, we're not going to allow this to be a thing. We're just going to turn it over to the kid." 49ers probably should have done that. I felt like they should have done it in that moment. I still feel like they should have done that. At least you would have known by now what you have for sure, or at least what he's trending towards. Right now, you're 2 years behind the eight ball. We have zero clue, and you still might not fully know by the end of this season. I think you're gonna have a better idea, but there's no guarantee that you know for sure. And I think if we look at a team, Chicago's a great example of this. If they had taken the same approach with Justin Fields and had the same bad luck that Trey Lance had with Justin Fields, where he gets injured in his second year, where he's finally able to start, I think when they got that first pick that they would have gotten rid of Justin Fields. And I think that might have been a mistake to do so. But they wouldn't have known. They would have had no clue. It would have been a new regime. And they would have said, you know what? We just don't know with Fields. He never really got the playing time. It sucks. We got this first pick. We really like Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson or whoever. And we'll let somebody else try to figure out the Justin Fields project. That's something that they're lucky. They started him early. They know where he's trending. They don't know who he is completely, but they know he's trending up. We don't know what Trey is at all. Like not even one iota, really, at this point.
I'm gonna leave the stream and come back because I've got too many people now bugging me on this. Do you mind reading a couple of the chats while I reboot here? I'll be back in just a minute because I want to finish strong.
All right. No problem. All right. Hold on. I can't. Here's the problem is I can't pull them up. So I'm going to read through them, but I can't pull them up. So Michael says if Trey Lance starts and tanks, trade value gone. True. But what's his trade value right now? I don't know. I think this is a really interesting conversation because I don't think he has no value. I think the Colts are a really good example. Let's take the Indianapolis Colts for a second. The Indianapolis Colts are in a situation where they are sitting at pick number 4. I think if you look at the quarterbacks in this draft, you've got a clear top 3 in whatever order you want to go with. Some people say it's Bryce Young. Some people say, hey, take a flyer on Anthony Richardson. I personally like CJ Stroud and then Anthony Richardson, but I think the top 3, there's a clear top 3. Now, Indy, who's sitting at 4, either needs to pick swap with Arizona to make sure they get one of those top 3 guys, or they're in a situation where they may end up either drafting Will Levis, who I don't like at all. And I think anybody who is paying attention to this thing would say that Will Levis is clearly behind the other 3. So do you draft Will Levis at 4, or do you take a guy like Shane Steichen, who's your head coach, and say, all right, he did it with Jalen Hurts. Let's trade a second-round pick for Trey Lance. We're going to get the best player available here at pick 4. We're not taking Will Levis, but we will give up a second-round pick here for Trey Lance. I could see a team like that going in on somebody like Trey Lance for a second-round pick. I don't think that makes sense for everybody, but all it takes is one team to give the value of Trey Lance as a second-round pick. So, Michael, I think this is a very, very interesting question.
Am I back? Rather. Am I any better?
Oh, much better. Yeah, much look better. At you. Right, it's like you're in HD all of a sudden.
Michael Monahan. You know what happened is I did a big long stream and I did another stream and I left the whole thing running all day. So I don't think I rebooted. I probably should refresh it. Anyway, Michael Monahan, that was the one you just read. If timeline,
yeah, and that's the only one. That's the only one. So
we're his trade value does go down. There's no doubt about it. It's like if they should they trade Trey only if they think he sucks. If they think he's going to be bad, then his value right now is higher than it will be. But if you think he's going to be good, then you're trading him at a low ebb right now, and I don't think I would do it. Either way, I'd just be so deathly afraid to trade Trey. I really would. Yeah. Glass half full guy. Are there any worthwhile left tackles available? I can't see them just going with McKivitz. I mean, right tackles. What do you think, Jesse, as far as I think this might be a spot for the draft or, that they hit in the draft because I don't know that there's a right tackle out there of note. I think you might have to go kind of the cheaper variety, like a Tom Compton or just somebody who could play right tackle, but isn't necessarily the answer.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, who's the best guy out there that's left? Is it Juwan Taylor? Is he still out there? And a lot of these guys didn't go for a lot, so maybe you can get him for much cheaper than what McGlinchey went for, and you feel comfortable there. If you go with a guy in the draft, and this is what a lot of people are saying, it's like, well, McKivitz is okay, but they'll get their starter in the draft. Maybe they will. Or even if they do get their starter, Shanahan doesn't like to play rookies. I think it's possible that they get their starter, but he doesn't play this year. Or they just miss completely and don't get a good player. You're drafting very late to get a starting offensive lineman to come in for sure week 1 and be ready to go, especially when Shanahan's your coach and he likes to redshirt guys. I don't know if the likelihood of that happening is there. It would be nice. I think it's a good plan, but plans can go awry very quickly.
Kind of an interesting one from Mansa. He says, I never hear you guys mention Tyron Johnson. I think he was a great pickup for cheap. Downfield threat with good size. Have you guys looked at him? I have not looked at him. We're talking about
No.
the wide receiver that they picked up at the very end of the year, right?
Hmm.
Um, really don't know much about him.
I don't either. I
He
don't know
went to
much
Oak
about him at
State.
all.
He went to Oak State. He's 6'1". He's 195 pounds. Other than that, Houston was his original team. He was an undrafted free agent. I'll watch him this summer. That's all I can give you. Um, I will say this though, you never know. You never know. They don't pick up these guys for no reason at all. The one thing that that nobody just accidentally winds up on the roster. Some
No,
Everybody on the roster was liked by some scout somewhere for some reason. So that's kind of why I did the deep dive on Brock Purdy. And when I didn't like that pick last year in the draft, I was like, well, somebody with the Niners who's getting paid probably a 6-figure salary pounded the table for this kid. When you draft him as Mr. Irrelevant, that means, hey guys, we like him. We could wait one pick and get him as an undrafted player, but we don't want to take that chance. We like this guy. So, and then I started watching him and I thought, okay, guy's got a pretty good little feel for the game. You can kind of see the feel that he has. But even then I thought, his arm strength looks kind of college-like and doesn't have big stature. And I go, it looks pretty interesting, but I'll wait till minicamp. And that's pretty much about it. When I saw him in minicamp, I thought, okay, this guy actually is a little bit more solid than I thought. And the ball was coming out with a little bit more zip than I thought. But then when I saw him in training camp, I was like, wow, this guy's throwing dimes. And if anybody who's not watching it, and like he would make these throws, Jesse, like on the run, and he hit some guy in stride, we'd all be sitting there watching it. I'm looking over at the other people are you watching this? Not
yeah,
one guy was like, can you believe that, Krug? It was just like, it was weird. It was like a sideline full of people whose job it is to cover football and who theoretically know football. And yet they were all watching it and nobody was reacting. It was like, doesn't matter. It's just
doesn't move me.
it's it's
Yeah,
crazy. And if Trey had made the exact same play, they would have been like, oh, that was incredible. Hit that guy in
yeah,
stride.
yeah,
So it's like,
yeah.
it's like people scout a lot of times off the program who's supposed to be good. And in their minds, they decided that Trey was supposed to be good. So, but I don't know.
I think also you had the whole Jimmy thing going on last year, so it's like it
Yeah.
was just as popular to talk about Jimmy throwing on the sideline than it was anything else. So
Mansa says 49ers added him in February. Tyron Johnson. Yeah, no, I absolutely will watch him tonight.
he's been around the league a ton. He was
Oh, he
undrafted for
has.
Houston, and he actually he's had 3 different stints with Houston, so he hasn't stuck. He was what, a 2019 kid, so I know about him a little bit. I just don't know about him. I know who he is. I just don't know what his career arc is and why. He's been on 10 different rosters and hasn't stuck. Who knows? That doesn't mean he's not good or he can't be good. It's hard to evaluate a guy that you really haven't seen.
More Mansa. He says, I have zero faith that Kyle uses Trey differently. Oh my
He called him a
God.
dual threat quarterback, Larry. I do too. I agree with this comment.
I do too, but it's like, are you kidding me? You're going to drop this
Yeah.
guy back, in a shotgun and then say, pick a hole and find one with no lead blocker and just pick and slide like he's Marcus Allen and short yardage. I mean, really? Is that really the plan? But I'll say right now, if that's the plan, then get ready for the next injury. There'll
Yeah.
be another injury coming and it'll be serious.
Yeah.
And
Sam
it
Darnold
won't be
might
just
start
me.
week 1, Papa.
What's that?
I say Greg Papa might be right, and Sam Darnold might start week 1.
Yeah. I mean, I do not want to see Trey in the shotgun, direct snap, no lead blocker, and he's just kind of picking and sliding, trying to find a hole between a defensive tackle and a defensive end. And I mean, to me, I think there's going to be a ton of criticism for Shanahan if he tries to do that again. Just use this guy the way you use the other guys. And if he can't throw it accurately, then it's on him. But don't create an entirely different offense for him and try to use him like he's Larry Zonka. even if it works, it's not going to work for very long, right?
Well, and not only that though, Larry, there's a reason you took him over Justin Fields. There's a reason you didn't really even sniff around Justin Fields is because you're using him the way that Justin Fields was probably perceived by you guys coming out of college, and you chose not to go with that quarterback. You drafted Trey Lance, I imagine, because he had a verbose playbook and he played under center 39% of the time and he called his own audibles and protections and he can turn his back to the defense and play action and all the other things that didn't include running. And then running was a really, really good bonus to have. But then you get him into the league and you turn him into a pistol quarterback who runs all the time. Trey wasn't doing that in college and he wasn't comfortable with that. He was comfortable with the offense that you like to run, which is why he was drafted. So why are you making it uncomfortable on him and uncomfortable on you? Just play him the way he wants to play and the way that you want to play. Why reinvent the wheel here? It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Kevin F says Lance is Jonathan Kuminga, who I don't know how much Warrior basketball you watch.
I know a little bit.
Yeah, Kuminga's got a ton of potential. You watch him and you're like, whoa, man, you start dreaming about the future. And I think the same thing can be said with Trey. I mean, I think I know Trey's going to be good. I just think it's going to take time, and I hope it can fit this timeline because I want it to be here and I don't want it to be elsewhere. But it's imperative that he hits the ground running this summer because realistically, Jesse, how much time do you think he's going to have to demonstrate what he has? I mean, realistically, if you had to sit here, where it's March 15th, we're projecting how much time Trey's going to get. It's tied to a lot of things, right? How does he look? How does Darnold look? How's Brock get healthy? Is Brock healthy? But without knowing any of that, how much time realistically do you think he has to adapt to this offense, to this league, and play winning, efficient football? Does he have any time, or does he have to just step in and win and produce right now, or people are just going to be like, get rid of him?
Yeah, I mean they're going to have to win with him for sure. First of all, I don't think he has it. He has to prove that he's at least still competent and that injury didn't completely take everything from him. And I think he proved that during last year's training camp. As long as he can continue to prove that and show little nuances of change. Last year, the one thing that I saw from Trey Lance, the major improvement from the year prior was his pocket presence. The year prior, he played frantic. It was organized chaos is what I called it. And he got the job done, but it just looked wonky. This year, when he got up there, it was like, oh my, immediately the first preseason snap, you're like, oh man, he's climbing the pocket and he looks very comfortable doing so. Both hands on the ball. He's got the dip in the shoulder if somebody comes around the corner. This is new. This is added to his game. This is a new thing in his bag. So you saw that improvement. You saw a step towards much better mechanics, at least from the lower half. And, you saw some things that still needed improvement. So now what does he add to his bag this offseason? If he can keep that in his bag and build on that, what is the one thing that he adds to his bag to show that he's improving? Doesn't mean he has to come out and be perfect, but did he improve at least one nuance of playing the quarterback position? I think he's going to have to show that. And I think that he's just going to have to be showing that every practice he is improving and getting it a little bit more. As long as he does that and Purdy's not back, he's definitely going to start. Now, as far as how long does he have once he starts? Oh, they've got to win immediately. The 49ers start slow every year. We know that. But that's not going to be good enough around here with Trey Lance. Jimmy Garoppolo can get away with that. Trey Lance can't get away with that. They're going to have to win, and they're going to have to win immediately. If he only gets 4 games before Brock Purdy's back, they better be in 3-1 if he wants to keep that starting job. Or if they've lost, he better clearly be ascending and looking phenomenal and not be the reason at all that they are losing if he wants to keep that job.
Yeah, I think it's more about points than wins, because you can win or lose lots of different ways. Like you could lose because of special teams, you could lose because of your corner play or your lack of rush. I think he needs to be, he needs to show that he can move this offense and score points. And that to me will put him on an even playing field with Brock. Refugio says, do you think that the 49ers take a flyer on an XFL guy? I have not watched one down of the XFL, Jesse. I have no idea who's in the league. I couldn't tell you if there's anybody out there that's good.
Josh Gordon's on a team. He's pretty good. Yeah, and I do know that Donovan West, who was the center that they grabbed last year, in last year's draft, he was undrafted, but he's in the XFL as well. So there's some names over there, but who knows? We'll see.
Yeah.
Some of these guys will make a team, though.
Oh, they absolutely will. I love the secondary football players because those guys love to play the game. Mansa says Kyle is just like his dad. He'll run players into the ground. I'm worried about CMC, Trey, Mason. Kyle will not win until he wins versus his ego. I like Kyle a lot, but I just said this the other day. Use the full contingent of players. Especially in the regular season. You want to go with CMC exclusively in the playoffs or whatever, fine, I guess. But you know what? Use TDP, use JP Mason, use Elijah Mitchell, limit the touches of CMC, spread your touches around because what you're doing is spreading the punishment. The running back takes so much punishment. It's like, God, you have to spread it around. I thought he used McCaffrey a little bit too much down the stretch, Jesse. Ultimately they lost in the playoffs and it didn't matter. McCaffrey looked good, but I would have used him a little less and tried to have him fresher at the end. I mean, that's just the way I look at it. Plus, these other guys are players. They can play. They're good.
Well, you chose for them to be on the roster, so once you do that, why not play them? Kyle has this weird thing where he just doesn't trust players until they get his system or show that they're almost refined and perfect. And I just don't think that's not how you make players better. You got to give them time to grow and develop and learn it. I always go back to Andy Reid and what he did with Kareem Hunt. Remember Kareem Hunt when he was drafted? His very first carry in the NFL was a lost fumble against I believe it was the Patriots. Patriots scored a touchdown just a couple plays later. If that was Kyle Shanahan, he wouldn't have touched the ball probably for the rest of the season the way that he does things. What did Andy Reid do? Not only did he keep him in the game, he fed him repeatedly through that game, and he broke the rookie rushing record for a first game ever. It might have been maybe for any game for a rookie. I know for sure it was the first game ever for a rookie, but he fed him until he couldn't feed him anymore. And he went off. He rushed for like 200 yards and 3 touchdowns and went crazy. But it's because Andy Reid believed in him. And I feel like Kyle Shanahan is not that guy a lot of the times.
Kareem Hunt, by the way, is a free agent, and I don't think anybody's touching him. And sad. It's like he's going to be on a team, but he's not going to ever get any money ever. And it's just, and he's a good player. And it's just like, you know what? I know there's going to be people like, oh, Krug, don't speak highly of a woman abuser and this and that. No, I get it. Believe me, I do. But
Kareem, I could see Dallas
player,
signing Kareem Hunt.
A hell of a player. What's
I
that?
could see Dallas signing Kareem Hunt. They just let go of Zeke. So maybe
if you need a good back, he's a good back. Glass half full guy says, any worthwhile kickers, or do you wait till the draft? Are they going to bring back Robbie Gould? Is Gould going to go elsewhere? Gould made it seem like he wanted to go elsewhere. I'd bring him back unless he was just dead set on going somewhere else. You're in a Super Bowl window. The guy's never missed in the playoffs. How do you not go with him?
Yeah, I agree with that. The kickoffs are a little frustrating. I hate that he can't get into the end zone.
Yeah.
And I understand it at his age. But as far as being money in big time kicks, 45 yards and under, man, he's going to hit those in the playoffs. So
he's money.
I sure do like to have that on the team.
Mansa's emptying the clip. He says, I think Kyle builds up for his system. Other offenses would have come later. He sets up his opponents with play calling in the first 8 weeks. Scheme trumps all. Kyle needs a better defense for this season. We got this one from Jaguar. He says, what happens with Elijah if he can't stay healthy? Well, he hasn't been able to stay healthy at all. I like him too. He's a good back. Elijah Mitchell's got great feel and he's got great instincts inside. And I think Shanahan was using McCaffrey and Mitchell ideally at the end of the year. Use McCaffrey on all these passing routes, use them a lot in the first half, finish the game with Elijah between the tackles. He never fumbles. He's got great pick and slide. But Elijah's awfully small, Jesse. I don't know if they can keep Elijah healthy.
Yeah, that's a big one there. Elijah Mitchell's a really good player, but he can't. I mean, he hasn't stayed healthy to this point. It's really hard to rely on him. And that's where guys like Mason do become very important. And TDP, who you spent a third round pick on, play those guys as well.
Yeah. A couple more before we go. Mansa says Trey needs to improve behind the line of scrimmage. Jay says Kyle matchup issues are greater. Quarterback uncertainty, in his opinion. Let's see here. Do we get into the bottom of the chat? Okay, a couple last ones before we let you go. What do you think is the worst move they've made thus far? I threw this to Grant earlier, but this is a tough one because I do like most of the moves they've made. But what in your mind, if you said, you know what, didn't like that move at all?
Mm. Well, and again, this is based off of an assumption. I would say at this point, if they were in on Bradbury and they chose to go with Brendel, I don't like that move at all. And like, Brendel is fine, Larry, but he's not an upgrade over Brendel. It was Brendel last year. It's going to be Brendel this year. Maybe he can make a slight upgrade, but Bradbury is younger. He's shown to be a pretty damn good center. I really do believe they were in on him. And so choosing not to go that route and spend just a little bit more money, I'm not a big fan of that. So for me personally, I would say that is my biggest gripe right now.
I just think that Shanahan doesn't spend a lot of time in the locker room, but man, if he had, and I'm sure he knows his players and he knows his team, but man, I mean, Jimmy Ward is one of the guys in the room that leads by example, leads verbally. He's a violent football player. He's a tone setter. Let's say there's 53 guys on a football team, but in reality, there might be like 3 to 5 what I would call tone setter guys in the room. George Kittle, he sets a tone.
Yeah.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson for Philly sets a tone. Jimmy Ward sets a tone. If you want to go back to the Niners of the Harbaugh regime, Dante Whitner was very much a tone-setting kind of a player. Alex Boone on that offensive line was very much of a tone-setting kind of a player. There's just guys who are like, I don't care what's going on. It ain't going down that way. And their will is like, you can feel their will and their intensity. And guys just gravitate to them and they follow them. And if you're lagging one day, this is the guy that's like gets you ready to play. For Kansas City, it's Chris Jones. You saw Chris Jones on the sidelines in the Super Bowl. He was going to kick everybody's ass. He was literally about to fight every guy in his team who didn't stand up and play harder. I mean, I saw that they weren't going to a commercial and Chris Jones just started talking. I was like, oh man, that Chris Jones,
scary. Yeah.
He's a scary dude. But that's Charles Haley, tone setter. Emmitt Smith, tone setter for the Cowboys of the 90s. Jimmy Ward's a tone setter. I don't let tone setting players get out of the room unless they're getting paid a shitload of money. And to me, to let him get out of that room for what the Texans offered him, inexcusable. And now you're going to have to go find new tone setters. And he's a culture guy. There's a reason that every team that played the Niners lost the next week. And it's guys like Jimmy Ward and their incredible physicality. So to me, that one is like, good luck replacing him, man. Good luck.
I feel like I'm actually kind of, if I had like one big surprise this offseason, it's how little some of these guys have been paid. I mean, I thought Jimmy Ward would get paid more. I thought Mosley would get paid more. I thought the centers and Pochick and Bradbury get paid a lot more. Everybody just seems to be getting a little bit less or a lot of bit less in some of these cases than what I expected, especially when the salary cap goes up. Usually money goes up. Man, it just doesn't, it hasn't felt that way. It's a very, very interesting offseason thus far. And not just from the 49ers standpoint, but the way the NFL has played out. I'm actually a little surprised.
Yeah. Jaguayo says Brunskill, he was Aaron Donald's daddy, LOL. He
Yeah,
did do it.
he's gone too.
Brunskill did do a nice job at defending Aaron Donald or at blocking Aaron Donald. But, really, I think what he did was he played mental games with him and he fooled him and tricked him and used his unbelievable pursuit ability against him.
Hmm.
I think Shanahan did a great job of fooling him. I think Brunskill did a great job of fooling him. Brunskill, I thought, he's a technician. He didn't just dominate him. It wasn't like he dominated him. He
No.
just when Aaron wanted to go left, he just let him go left as long as left was not the way they wanted. They were running right, and Aaron, when went left, he just let him go left. I feel like he fooled him more than he beat him. I don't know. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
yeah, he tricked him. It was like playing basketball with your dad in the driveway and you're too young to hit certain
right.
trick shots and he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm just going to mop you at the game of pig because you can't hit this trick shot yet." Like that's all it was.
That's a great one. All right, last question. Appreciate your time. By the way, everybody, we got 500 people roughly hanging in the room. Everybody, I'm sure you already are joined to Jesse's channel, but if you're not, subscribe to Jesse's channel. I want you all right now to go subscribe to Jesse's channel, and there it is, JNay_LSS.
You can find it on the hat right there. Last second
Last
sports.
Second Sports. Jesse, how long have you had the channel going?
Actually, so about 2 years. I initially had one and lost it about nine months or so in, and so I had to restart. So yeah, this is the second go at it, and it's going well. We just crossed 10K over there, so we're having a good time.
Dude, you're kicking ass, man. It was a pleasure talking to you the other day too. I was on in the outfield berm at Salt River Fields, and I had some radio fans buying me tall boys on the grass, and I'm getting sunburn, and which is why I'm peeling now, and I'm out there and we're talking shop and talking YouTube, and it was cool. It was cool. I really enjoyed our conversation. All right, last one. Lynch comes to you. He says, "You know what? I'm tired of talking to Peters. I'm going to Naylor," and he says, "Jesse, um, I can clear some money. You tell me, give me one free agent that hasn't signed that you absolutely think we ought to call, negotiate with, and finalize a deal. Is there a position or an individual free agent that you're like, you know what? Go fucking get that guy."
Ooh, man. I would have said that guy would have been Mr. Orlando Brown, but he just signed with the Bengals. Great
Saw
get
that.
by them, by the
Big money,
way.
huh?
Man, if it has to be one guy, I I would prefer I'm gonna cheat a little bit. It's gonna be one position, but it's gonna be two guys to fill what I think the cost of one guy would be. So I know a lot of people are really big on Yannick Ngakoue. He's 27, and I think that we can get him, and he would be a good bookend for however many years. I look at that position and say, I think Drake Jackson certainly can be that guy, but maybe he still needs another year to fully reach that potential. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get older guys that are much cheaper, and I'm going to get two of them. I'm going to get Quinn and I'm going to get Houston. And one of those guys is going to do exactly what I need him to do. I don't know which one, but both of them, just a year ago, Houston had 9.5 sacks. Quinn had 18.5 sacks 2 years ago. One of those guys is going to produce, and they're going to do it at an inexpensive level. And I'm only going to have to commit 1 year to them. And then it's Drake Jackson's show. He's going to be in the mix as well this year, but we're going to make sure that we fully develop him. But we also take care of that bookend opposite of Bosa. And we're going to do it through two veterans for cheaper than I can get a guy like Yannick Ngakoue. That's how I'm going to go fill out. And that's the position I'm going to go after.
I like it. I like it. I'm gonna go. I have a hard time, deciding on one. I mean, I really want Chauncey Gardner Johnson.
Yeah, I
Now,
would love that.
Aaron Wilson from NBC is reporting that the Broncos are among the teams interested in C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
I heard
I
the
just
Ravens are in play.
really,
Mhm.
man, he's a corner. He's a safety. He's a linebacker. He's exactly that kind of tone setter that I just described Jimmy Ward as. So I'm going to stay with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. If I can't get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I like the idea of a real speed threat opposite Bosa, because I think we know when there was Bosa and D Ford, D Ford could get the edge at will, and Bosa's Bosa, and it just stretches out an offensive line. It just puts so much pressure. So I like Leonard Floyd, and I just think Leonard Floyd. He was on a Chicago team that didn't really do it. He was on a Rams team where Donald and Von Miller got the headlines. And I always just felt like Leonard Floyd was just a nightmare. He's just long, he's fast, he's athletic, he's explosive. So I'd like Leonard Floyd if I can't get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, one of those two guys. And by the way, the Browns signed Mo Hurst. What do you think of that move? Mo Hurst almost never really played for the Niners. It's hard to really say anything about Mo Hurst. I mean, I saw him with the Raiders. I saw him in brief snippets with the Niners, but I really didn't see that much of him.
No, we didn't see much of Mo Hurst at all. I think he was a guy that a lot of us thought we could bring back and maybe it could work out for a year. And we saw some of the talent for sure in short stints, but I mean, whatever. It's fine. We went and got another Raider guy who might be able to do some of the same things. So we'll figure it out. What I was trying to do is I was looking up, trying to figure out what exactly Bates got, because you were talking about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and I got to imagine they'll be close to the same range. Maybe Chauncey will probably come in a little bit cheaper for whatever reason. I think he's better than Bates, but it's around 16.5 million a year. But I couldn't find Spotrac didn't have the exact breakdown of like the first couple years and what that looked like. I was curious to see if Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I mean, he's probably going to come in around, 14, 15 annually. I mean, they can create the cap space. I would love to do it. I know a lot of people love that Gibson is back, and I do too, but Gibson isn't getting paid a lot of money. He's 33 years old. They still need depth there, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is a guy that can play nickel if need be, while, we get all three of these players on the field. I would love to have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I don't know. I don't know how realistic it is. I would love it though. Trust me. I do like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as well.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I think he's the guy for me is just because I don't know about, Hufanga, as far as I don't know that he can play the full. I mean, there's going to be injuries. Some guys are going to go down. If Hufanga goes down, who plays strong safety? If Gibson goes down, who plays the deep middle? If you lose Lenore, maybe who plays outside corner? If you lost Oliver, who plays the slot corner? The nice thing is, if you have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he could play all of those spots. And so I think he's the perfect free agent, and I would pay him big dollars because there's real value in having a tone setter, B, somebody who's that physical, and also somebody who could step in for like 3 or 4 different guys if they went down. So he's definitely would be my choice.
I
Jesse, great
think,
stuff. Oh, go ahead.
well, real quick, I was just going to say, I think that's why, and definitely not to the degree of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, but losing a guy like Brunskill is going to go under the radar, but he really could play all the positions on the line too, and he could do it well. And I think losing a piece like that, somebody who's so versatile, always does hurt, especially when you've probably taken a step back on your offensive line from a starting standpoint. Now, if you have to start getting into those secondary pieces, how confident are you in the Nick Sickels and the Poes and Jalen Moores, those types of guys? So I'll be curious to see how it plays out.
Last Second Sports. Everybody go over to Jesse's channel and sign up right now if you haven't already. Third String All Pro says Larry's Trent Baalke impression earlier was hilarious. Have you heard me do
I'm
my
gonna have to go watch this.
You got, Jesse, we really love you. It's a tremendous show that you've put together. I would like you more, Jesse, if you had torn your ACL. I just think your show would have greater depth. You're not an outside linebacker, Jesse. You're just not. I've got to use you in a rotation.
Wow, that was so good. Oh my God. How do you like breathe out and suck in at the same time? That's how
It
that guy
hurts.
talks. That's incredible. That was so good. Does that
It
hurt your
literally
throat?
it literally hurts to do a Trent Baalke. But yeah, I used to do a regular bit with him. And I'd be like, "Hey Trent, how you doing?" He's like, "How you doing, Larry? Yeah, I like Gerald Hodges. I've heard you on the radio kind of ripping him, all right? And you think you know a lot, but I'll tell you, Gerald Hodges, and like, yeah, all right, thanks. I'm like, I said to him in camp one year, I'm like, I don't like your linebackers, man. You got Bowman, but he's off the injury. You got nobody else. He's like, I think you're forgetting Gerald Hodges. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. I stand corrected. All right.
I think everybody's forgot Gerald Hodges there,
Yeah.
Chief. Good try,
Exactly.
though.
I should have said, you know what? I should, in that same year that I was questioning him about his linebackers, that was the year that the Niners, I think it was under Chip Kelly, gave up 100-yard rusher back like 9 out of 10 weeks. It was like Bilal Powell went for 100. Reuben Drones went for 100. Jacquizz Rodgers went for everybody went for 100 against the Niners. Jesse, awesome stuff, man. Love to have you on next week or in the next 10 days or so as more Niners stuff happens. We'll figure it out. I'll send you a text. But peace, brother. Have a great night. Thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely, brother. We'll talk soon. Later.
Sounds good. Jesse Naylor. He's fantastic. Everybody sign up for Jesse's show. He is the real deal. And I love having him on. Raymond Martinez. That was awful. Oh, come on. Awful? Nick says, great show, guys. El Camilo Dorado says, Clippers-Warriors game has gone crazy. All right, I'm going to go watch the rest of the Clippers-Warriors game. Join me after Clippers-Warriors on the channel for a live stream. Cyrus Satsis is going to stop by from Locked On. Bay Area Baller will be in the house. Frank Red will be in the house. Hopefully Dan and Rye will be in the house as well. And we'll talk a lot of Warrior basketball. Sorry for the technical fuck-ups earlier in the show, guys. I don't have a outdated setup. I just had kind of let my computer go all day, and I should have rebooted it somewhere along the line to kind of reset everything, and I didn't, and I should have, and I apologize. MF says, good stuff, fellas. Thank you, MF. Trock Talk says, talk like that with the filter, Larry. Trent Baalke was a really good GM. Will Trent Baalke be in the house? Yes, fish and chips. Trent Baalke will be in the house. Amazing third quarter of the Dubs Clips game. Steph put on a show. I know, I'm watching it. Got it over here. All right, a couple words from our sponsors, and then we'll bolt out of here. Thanks to our title sponsor, Pig and a Pickle. Check them out in Corte Madera. They're open 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. in Marin County, the best barbecue in Northern California. Get the brisket, the pulled pork, the baby back ribs, the collard greens. Ooh, who doesn't love a little collard greens? The kettle tallow chips, amazing. The beef brisket chili, phenomenal. Damon and Mary have a great restaurant. It's called Pig and a Pickle. They're open every day in Corte Madera, Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville, which is in the East Bay, which if you're like me and you live out in the East Bay, it's a great spot to go to. And if you're from out of town, when you come to town, go check out Pig and a Pickle. And if you're a big fan of Pig and a Pickle, if you're a big fan of the show, you can always email or put a note on any of the videos that tell us you love Pig and a Pickle, and I will forward that right to the owner of the restaurant. So thanks to Pig and a Pickle. And here's a little video for about 60 seconds on Pig and a Pickle. also thanks to Telmetrics, our sponsor, Telmetrics, TELMETRIX.com or .co. If you hurt your shoulder, your elbow, you want to rehab it, you don't want to go to the doctor, ER, or urgent care. You want to it's not that bad, but you just want to see if you get some help and some advice on how to rehab your injuries. This can help all of you. If you're a weekend warrior, heck, I'm walking around right now. I kind of wrenched my back the other day. I'm looking for ways to kind of alleviate pain without running up the huge doctor bills. Telmetrics.co, TELMETRIX.co. And special thanks to the sponsor of today's show, New York Style Italian Sausage. It's a phenomenal product, man. I love New York Style Italian Sausage. Often imitated, never equaled. Check out their website, NewYorkStyleSausage.com. And here's a word from our good friend, Pasquale.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. How can you go to church if you don't believe in God? And along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. It wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, that life is good.
All right, it's 104.96 clips with about 11 minutes to play. Join us in the post game. Myself, Eric Price, Bay Area Baller, maybe Danny, maybe Rye, definitely Cyrus. Frank Red's going to be in the house. It's all straight ahead after Warrior basketball. Where? Right here on the Krueger Show.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Careful, whatever you bring me getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah, we ain't never fall back.